Hey guys, today I will be discussing some of the books that I have read and feel that they don't have enough recognition or are not being discussed enough by people and definitely deserve more recognition. I will also be discussing who the book in this list might be for and if it would suit you and whether you should pick it up or not. But according to me, all these books are perfect and you must give them a try. So let's begin with the list. The first book in the list we have is Skeleton at the Feast by Chris Bojalian. Now I don't think that's the right way to pronounce his last name, so please excuse me for that. I actually got this book for a very cheap price in a book fair. It was almost in a mint condition, so it was a no-brainer for me, so I picked it up without even reading the synopsis. And I'm very glad that I did. Skeletons at the Feast is the kind of book which will stay with you long after you have read it. It is a really beautiful and heartbreaking story about a family which is on the move during the World War II to basically end their difficulties that they face and to get a new life. The relationships that are built throughout this book are the main highlight of the book according to me. The author excels in creating an environment of a country ravaged by the war. It is really heartbreaking to experience the characters go through such turmoil throughout their journey in the book, but that's what makes it worthwhile to read. According to me, Skeletons at the Feast is one of the greatest tragedies that I've read. So if you are the kind of reader who is interested in the war and want to know how the people actually suffered through it, then Skeletons at the Feast is the perfect book for you. I would absolutely suggest you to read it. The book is about 400 pages, but once you get hooked to it, you might even finish it within a day, like I did. So the next book that we have on this list is The Roots by Alex Haley. This book is probably the longest book on this list and also my favorite. This book was basically referred to me by one of my English teachers at my school, and I'm so glad that she did. I have read it 3 times since then. About 700 pages, The Roots is a very detailed account of the life of previous 6 generations of the author. The author took 12 years in tracing back the 6 generations of his family. The journey of the book begins with Kunta Kinte, a black young man from Africa who is captured by the British and sold as a slave. The author beautifully describes the African culture, the African folklore, and we get to know a lot about the people there and the beliefs back then. So after the capture of Kunta, we follow him and his next 5 generations trying to make a living in a foreign land and gain freedom from slavery. This book is absolutely heartbreaking and haunting. I would say if you are interested in exploring the lives of slaves back in the time and want to know more about the slave trade and the conditions in Europe back then, during the time in which slave trade was prevalent, then pick this book up. To be honest, I myself didn't want to know anything of this sort before starting this book, but anyway ended up loving the book so much that I have read it thrice already. So I would say, irrespective of your interest in the things I have mentioned previously, I highly recommend for you to at least give it a try. It is a commitment of 700 pages and it is a long journey, but it is surely worthwhile. The next book that I have on this list is a mystery thriller, that is Endless Night by Agatha Christie. Now Agatha Christie is well known as a queen of crime all over the world. She is also amongst one of the best-selling authors of all time ever. Her books have been translated in more than 100 foreign languages and she has put out masterpieces like And Then There Were None and Murder on the Orient Express. But the book I feel that is most underrated work by her is Endless Night. Unlike many of her books, this book has a considerably less number of characters. I would also classify this book as a psychological crime thriller rather than a simple crime novel. So this book belongs to the series by Agatha Christie in which no particular detective solves the case, but in the end we get to know who was the murderer. So yeah, that's the series it belongs to. I personally think that this book has passed under the radar of many people just because the sheer number of books that Agatha Christie has published in a lifetime. I would honestly put this book on the same level as the Murder on the Orient Express or even higher. So if you are a fan of crime thrillers and Agatha Christie, I absolutely recommend this book to you. please pick it up. The next and the last book in this list is The Man in the Tower by Aravind Adiga. Aravind is well known for his debut novel The White Tiger, which also won the Man Booker Prize. So continuing his brilliant writing, Aravind Adiga in this book yet again comes with a brilliant story. I would not be discussing the story of this book because I don't want to give out spoilers, because I really want you to read this. So I'll just move on to the characters. So talking about the characters of the book, I feel that nobody does characters better in Indian literature than Aravind Adiga. Now obviously I haven't read every single Indian author out there. My judgment is solely based on the limited reading that I have done. One of the things that I like about Aravind Adiga's books is the language. The language in his books that he uses is very raw. Now that won't make sense to you right now, but you will definitely get what I mean if you read it. This nature, the raw nature of the language, helps the books to feel very realistic and enhances the experience of the reader. Just try it out. The Last Man in the Tower is a beautiful example of how people can change by corruption and power. How the system forces the people to change. This book tries to prove the point that however honest or good a person might be, given the opportunity and under the right circumstances, how it is almost impossible to resist power and money. And also, what happens if you try to resist. It is highly recommended for everyone. Do check this out. So those were the top 4 books that I have read and I feel are underrated. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, happy reading.